Um, so before we kind of, and I do want to then go into your story, Peter, because I know when we talked, you know what I mean, you were very open with me, and I thought, you know, here's a guy who's actually really authentic and will is happy to share that vulnerability and tell those stories. But just I suppose to frame up the rest of the conversation about putting yourself in other people's shoes, because I know this is something you know you're really passionate about and bringing diverse voices, right? Like you said, to
Hmm.
avoid that groupthink. But just for the audience out there who may either not understand it, be skeptical, whatever, first question I'd ask is why is it important, do you think, to put yourself in other people's shoes?
Well, that's empathy, right? Putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. And if you don't know what they're living, if you don't know what it's like to be that kind of a person, whether it's in your organization or even in society, generally speaking, then it's really hard to make good decisions, and you otherwise have only one lens through which you see the world. And so I've spent a lot of time trying to understand what it. So today is International Women's Day, March 8th, where I'm joining from. It's tomorrow, by the way, here, and understanding what it's like for women in the workplace, or what it's. I'm a gay man as well, so what is it like, to be somebody who's from a diverse community? I think it's really important that senior executives understand that, because if they don't, then the decisions that they make are just from their point of view. And I think, diversity and that sort of thing is not just a checkbox. It's not like, let's get a woman on the committee and let's get a gay person and a black person and then we're done. I think the really important marker around that is, do people feel like they belong, right?
That's so
And we've all
important.
had times and we've all had times in our life where we felt like we didn't belong, whether it was at a party, on a sports team, in the community, or whatever. There's times when we've all felt like outsiders. Not a very good feeling to not feel like you belong. And I think one of the key roles that executives have to play in their organization, and where diversity inclusion comes in, it's a means to an end. And that end is belonging. And so why it's important to put yourself in other people's shoes is in order to create that sense of belonging and know what it takes for those people to feel like they belong. And if you don't do that, then you're going to find that people move on and find a place where they do belong. And increasingly, you're finding organizations are more and more mindful of that notion. And if you don't do that, you will be left behind. The talent that's available to you won't be as rich and as deep as the talent that's available to an organization that values some of these qualities.
For our audience, Peter, that's absolute gold. I so get what you say. And I'm sure that really hope that our audience is dialing into that.
Thank you.
I often say this, but don't just, when you listen, you said listen actively or listen with intent. Don't talk to, talk with. But I say to people, first listen with your heart, and then with your eyes, and then with your ears. And then you'll probably have a better understanding of the situation. Know how they're feeling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, Peter, I suppose I know this is something obviously you're very passionate about. It's the topic today, and you were very kind to share your backstory. Obviously, before you became a senior leader at Star City, and for everyone in Australia will know who that is, especially people in Sydney. For around the world, it's a large casino and gaming organization, thousands of people. So just maybe for our audience, tell us a little bit about who Peter is, what led, to this point, and what made you passionate about this kind of stuff, the obstacles you faced along the way.
Well, the easiest place to start, I guess, is around, I became interested in more values-based issues at an early age, like in my late teens, early 20s. And I then sort of wanted to just align, and you see that with employees today as well, kind of align my values with the kind of work that I was doing. I didn't just see a job as a job. There's millions of jobs out there, but is it the right job for me? And I think it's really important as a person and as a leader to be clear about your values, like what's important to you. And then from that, what's your purpose as a person? So I've been very clear about my purpose, and it relates to a lot of what we've talked about today. It's to create confidence and community for those seeking to address the world's social and environmental issues. And so, that notion of community and confidence go together. And because you can't have that confidence without that sense of community, right? I think. And so that's really kind of defined a lot of what I did. And I did an MBA with a specialization at the time. This goes back a few years into the early 90s, people, when some of you weren't even born. But there was no MBA at the time that specialized in, this was one of the first MBAs that specialized in environmental management. And people said, well, that's a career limiting move. Why would you take a business degree and care about the environment? That's stupid, right? They all wanted to work at Bain and Boston Consulting Group or be a brand manager for Wrigley's Gum or whatever. And I'm like, listen, I can tell you these issues, that intersection of business and society and the environment, that's going to become increasingly important. How can it not be? And that has really defined a lot of the roles that I've had. So I've been the chief marketing officer for an organization a retailer in Canada that was in the outdoor space. I've been a chief social purpose officer in British Columbia, most recently for an organization that was that runs all the lotteries and casinos and online gaming. And people have said to me, well, that's not really values based. Like, you're just exploiting people. It's like, well, no, actually, if practiced properly, it's a form of entertainment, right? And Star, by the way, is an entertainment and hospitality organization. We have hotels, restaurants, performing arts centers. We're about to open a multi-billion-dollar facility in Brisbane that's got 100 stores and 50 restaurants and hotels and so on. It's a very broad experience, and gaming is just part of that experience, right? And so, from my perspective, I'm very involved in the safer gambling side of the equation, and that's really about customer care, right? Like creating a good experience, whether it's my check-in at the hotel, whether it's the meal that I have. Did you care about me and look after me as well in terms of my gaming? So all of these things have, that social purpose or that personal purpose that I had has helped to drive the decisions that I've made. I haven't been in it for the money. Yes, I have a comfortable, job and existence currently, but that's not what drove me. I was a consultant for many years. I had lived in India for 5 years. I worked in corporate social responsibilities there, initiatives there. So I think, the one thing that's defined a lot too is just the sense of adventure and curiosity. And that's served me really well. So being open to different experiences and, just jumping into the deep end and doing things with gusto. And, I didn't always have the answers. I think, one of the things that we talked about, is dealing with setbacks and how do you deal with setbacks as a person. I've had a lot of setbacks along the way. And I think one way of dealing with it is, wasn't I stupid and what a victim am I and blah, 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 and having this narrative that we have in our head around those things. And the other way is to say, what can I learn from this? And there's, I'm a big believer in Stoicism, Stoic philosophy, and there's a notion that, the obstacle is the way. Like, what stands in front of you or stops you from something is there's a learning moment in that, right? And you can either say, oh, poor me, that's stopping me from doing what I want to do, or, that kind of victim mentality. Or you can say, okay, well, that didn't work out the way I hoped. What can I learn from that? And how can that strengthen me into that next opportunity, right? And I've sometimes applied for jobs where I didn't get the job that I thought I wanted, and then it opened a whole new range of possibilities that I didn't even know existed. And so that's where the obstacle sometimes is the way. And I think that's an important philosophy to hold as well. And I think as a leader, people are looking for that sense of optimism from you, right? Nobody wants to be with somebody who's like down, like a downer, or doesn't have the confidence that we can find a solution. That doesn't mean that you have to have all the answers, but that means you have to create a climate and an environment where those answers can be found or where the pathway can be forged. And I think that's an important component as well.